Hello everyone, thank you for coming out tonight to the Crypto Happy Hour. I think this is our fifth or sixth edition on the internet. My name is Jose Enrique Gonzalez and I am here today with Vicenz and Nico from DexGrid. They've been working. Yeah, good round of applause for DexGrid. They actually have a pretty cool project I had the pleasure of reading about. They work in the energy industry, and I'll let them do a little more talking about what they do. They seem to understand it better than I. Without further ado, I want to ask you guys, I don't want to ask you guys anything. Is there anything you guys would like to say before we get started? Sure.
Sure, so I'm going to introduce myself. So this is Nico. There's a French name behind which is very hard to pronounce. So it's going to be Nico. And so I think, we should start by introducing ourselves in relation to crypto maybe. This is what is going to interest people. So crypto started looking into the Bitcoin white paper in 2013. I had my mindset wired to that extent because I was trading in finance, coming from an engineering background in civil engineering. And 2008 came. We all know what happened in 2008. One bank went down, and a few other institutions.
Yeah.
And so I took the time, the opportunity to just do something else. And so I went to a broker that I created with a partner of mine, and we started looking into peer-to-peer transactions, futures exchange, central clearance, so that hedge funds would be able to cross interest with each other. But that's the limit of what the traditional world can do in regards to removing the intermediary. And so when I looked at the Bitcoin white paper with my partner, we were just, oh wow, that's it. And so from there we just did a ton of research, put some money, invested in, because when you put your money, this is the only way to actually know what the thing is about. And years down the road, I looked specifically at Ethereum because I wanted to be able to build something on top of that. Didn't know what exactly. And then I met Vicenz in Puerto Rico, and we kind of decided this is exactly what we wanted to do.
Cool.
So Vicenz, my background's just the way I always present it is I've basically focused on sustainability and turn renewable energy around, just trying to keep as much carbon into the ground as possible. So I was working previously in my career more in the engineering side, energy out of California and Mexico with Solar City, and later when it got bought with Tesla. And that was just sort of my focus, just installing as much solar as possible through them. And one of my friends from college, he went off the software route and was working in startup space. Eventually went over to Consensus. Amin, probably a bunch of people have heard of Amin. And he was working at that point on scaling solutions, especially around helping people that really can't get payment solutions to be able to access it. And we started chatting. He was just sort of figuring out like what's going on in solar, why isn't it faster, and when, like what's the deal? Why is this not like it's supposed to go up exponentially and it's sort of whittling? And we had a long amount of conversations over a couple of months towards the end of my time at Tesla, and we decided really what's missing is over there on the capital raise side. So how do we get more money into it? We need more money because it's capital intensive. That's how you solve it, not just designing solar systems better, but like getting capital into it. So we decided to try crowd lending, and then that was also the same, trying to just build stuff on Ethereum, playing with smart contracts, getting wallets so you can just sort of plug into stuff, and you all of a sudden realize that no one can get in the way of you accessing these financial tools. You don't need to talk to someone in a building with a suit that has it's an established business with a name. You just get the wallet, go on the internet, go on the website, and you just start interacting with contracts that move capital and ownership and things around from your laptop or your phone or whatever. And that was pretty exciting.
I think it's still exciting. We were talking earlier about renewable energy credits, and I think that the current markets are different from what you're describing. a few years ago, I had the pleasure of helping a few people out with a project, and one of the challenges they faced was the fact that this market is so centralized, and not necessarily centralized, but you need an attorney to sign your papers, you need an attorney for everything. There is no centralized ledger or decentralized ledger for that matter, where you can see who produced what credits, everything's kind of like by word of mouth and quote unquote, right? Please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert. But I kind of wanted to talk about or jump into energy credits and what you guys do at DexGrid, right? Because like you mentioned, your mission is to keep as much carbon in the ground as possible, right? So how does DexGrid help accomplish this?
All right, so there are three components, I think, to that question. The traditional world, intermediaries, friction. The second one, renewable energy credits, RECs, for the people who know on the topic. And the other one, how DexGrid goes around the electricity marketplace and what the energy alternatives, might look like. So on the first topic, I don't know if people realize, but this is a business that institutions have made sure that it would continue on and on to put as much friction as possible into people's lives, so that people will have to rely upon those institutions in order to be able to do things in life. A bank account, why do you need a bank account? You can put the money under your mattress. That's not going to generate revenue. But now you know where the yield is in the bank savings account. It doesn't really make sense anymore for you to have the money over there. Banks give you abilities, to send money somewhere, do some things, but that's going to be very expensive. Banks between themselves with larger customers charge them a credit cost on transaction that they do on behalf of their customers. So there is a CDS, there is a credit default swap market that exists, which is basically just putting the bank in the middle so they can cash in any kind of premium that they can in order to have their users do transactions. When you look at the electricity marketplace, you have a very comparable picture. So you have the utilities. Utilities in most of the regions of the world, except Puerto Rico and some regions similar to Puerto Rico, have absolutely no business in doing with the electricity. The only thing they do is they are the intermediary between the buyer and the seller between being the generation for the electricity, and the seller not having the generation, not having the tools to be able to face the buyer of the electricity, so you, me, everyone here. Then they sell a bunch of that electricity as a batch to a utility, and the utility basically resells that to local customers. But when you realize that there are so many friction, as you were mentioning, the lawyers and all the constraints in the middle, it makes absolutely no sense considering what the technology today actually enables to do. So that was the first part. The second part is the renewable energy credit. So in the context of DexGrid and the energy alternative, you have two energy credits that you can consider. The first one is the renewable energy credit, which is the RECs, that is the offset of the carbon tax, so that people can can use actually, fossil fuel and offset that carbon credit against it. There is a limit, there is an expiration to that market, which is going to be 2050. Which by then, according to the Accord of Paris in France, then basically no one will be able to use fossil fuel sources anymore. It might be delayed a little bit because things take time. The other energy credit that we have at DexGrid is actually the mean to purchase electricity, which is called energy credit. We'll be able to talk about that later also. And the last point is how we actually look to that kind of energy alternative at DexGrid. We want to position ourselves with as fewer frictions as possible. there should be absolutely no friction between the buyer of electricity and the seller of electricity, and everyone should be able to make the most of what they have given access to them at the time of the transaction or at the time of desire to transact, to do something.
Yeah. And also just coming from the energy industry. So the part that people keep being frustrated with, if you sit there on energy Twitter and you follow...
Energy Twitter, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's funny. People in blockchain like are always like, are you frustrated with like Bitcoin Twitter or crypto Twitter? Really, most of my Twitter that I follow, because you get to just choose who you follow,
right,
and block people or not follow anyone that you don't enjoy anymore. And most of mine is energy Twitter, so I'm mostly following people that are working, Rocky Mountain Institute professors, people working in the industry, and a lot of the frustration, to me, at least in my view, boils down to like we have to keep dealing with utility companies and regulators that have just no interest in changing. Like why? Like they have their system, it works great for them. Their shareholders are very happy right now with this consistent return and the dividends that get paid out. And the system's there's no like force that's really that strong right now that can shove this off and change it. And really often, like it's kind of unsaid in the space, but people are like, well, why are they not, for example, in Florida, people are wondering why is there not more solar in Florida? It's the sunshine state and it doesn't have more solar. But like these CEOs at the utility companies there had open statements. This is hopefully not get me in trouble or anything, but they were openly saying that they're antagonistic to projects. How they framed it and everything, maybe they had their point at some point, but they were openly saying like we're not interested in bringing solar in here and tying it in, partially because it just competes with how their model works now, but they also, these utility companies own the generation, the fuel generation, like natural gas or coal or nuclear, and why would they bring someone in to knock off some of their share that they can sell that they invested in? If solar comes in and undercuts the market and then people are buying the solar instead of their fossil fuel generation, they're just going to lose money and they have no interest in doing that. So they're antagonistic to it. So what's like the actual problem? Not that antagonism, but the fact that they have that power to sit there and dictate who gets to, like what people get to buy, right? And what's really exciting with the microgrid system is you can disconnect from that whole system and not have to deal with utility companies. Puerto Rico is a generation behind that. We don't even have utility companies in the marketplace here.
Right.
We literally don't have a market. It's just the government owns the resources of the grid and then you buy it from them.
You can generate, right? But you can generate, but you have to sell it to them. You don't have much of a choice, and they own the transmission line.
Exactly. That's the market here, right? The market is you come to them.
You don't really sell. I think we have to talk about the net metering, but it's not really selling. So
Not net metering, but like a PPA.
right. So you have two ways of selling. So you could have an RFP, request for proposal, and PREPA or Luma, says, okay, we need 100 megs somewhere, and then a big institution is going to come and say, okay, this is my price, and this is. So historically speaking, and unfortunately, for the attractiveness of the island in regards to the investors, is that you could have a player that basically, just say, no, this is not a good price, and I'm not doing it. Next. Unfortunately, PREPA does it a little bit differently, which is they say yes, and then gradually they say no. And the problem is that when you have an investor that keeps coming, being said yes, investing money, time and effort, and at the end it's no, then no one actually trusts. And if you have no trust, then you have no investment possible to happen.
And we've seen this happen a whole bunch of times in Puerto Rico. I've previously worked at Tesla, like we were interested in it here, and we're observing other people trying to get in and try to sell renewable energy at a lower price, significantly lower price of generation than what they have here, and just get denied. And a really frustrating part of it is they go criticism. I think it's just literally just explain the matter of fact of how it functions here, and then it's one generation ahead in places like the U.S., for example, with the deregulation. But it's still like, as a person consuming power, and you're at your home and you have your rate, and you wonder why your cost of electricity is going up. It's exactly because of things like this. It's because they're not allowing people to come in and provide lower cost of power because they sit in the middle and they don't have an interest in doing that. it's the monopoly model sort of sits there and goes like, no, you can't do it. We want to basically build a system where you can opt out or opt in.
So that's on the investment side. Some of your audience may actually think, so what about the prosumers, the people with their own system on their house? And that's why when you were using the term selling the electricity, I just wanted to clarify that in that situation, this is not selling, it's net metering through the interconnection with the grid.
And it makes complete sense.
It makes complete sense, but there is a way better alternative to that, because when you have your own system, most of the time what you do is you're like, okay, I need 500 kilowatt hour a month, and so I'm gonna have someone, from a wholesaler, like pricing me something for my house, solar panels, battery, and then this is gonna be my cost. Most of the time what happens is that because there is no transparency in that market, and that's something that we're also looking at, prices are higher than what they're supposed to be, and this is the reason why you can't really get like a quote directly online. You have to call the salesperson because they have to go through the sales pitch, which is normal, but I think on the user side you would also like to have a bit more transparency towards how much does it cost actually a solar panels here in Puerto Rico, how much does it cost a battery, so that people can make a better educated decision. Net metering is not you sell. Net metering is that you have a credit for whatever you're not using that goes back to the grid. But the credit is only offset if you purchase from the grid. However, the initial purpose of having your own system is that you don't need to purchase from the grid. So most of the time what happens is that those credits die, they expire, even though you still have the feeling
They
that you get.
expire.
Yeah, of course.
No, what do you mean?
They're not forever.
That's powerful. You guys talked about many things. My head is still wrapping.
I don't think we actually answered the question you asked us though,
It's
which
fine.
was about keeping carbon in the ground. So about keeping carbon in the ground on the grid edge space, what people are frustrated with is they want to change how rates are done. So as a consumer, right, just from the person, you're in your house, you receive your utility bill that you've got to pay every month to keep the lights on. Why are the charges what they are, right? That's what people in the end care about, right? Other than like, why is there not more solar or something like that? And the reason why the rates are the way they are is because they go on and they purchase the power ahead of time for you, and then they sell it to you.
Yeah,
but
there's a whole institution that does that executes what you just described, that needs to be paid.
exactly, yeah, the whole grid, all the services they provide you, and that makes sense. But the thing that we're trying to draw out, and people in the grid edge, it's called grid edge, like the more advanced spaces where we're trying to try new things in electric grids, are frustrated with, is like, it's 2021, we can do more complex kind of pricing marketplaces using technology than just, here's the price per unit of power that we set for this year, and then when you consume some amount of power, we'll multiply by that price, and that's what you pay. That doesn't make sense, because there's a whole bunch of variability and just a whole bunch of different things around what the value of the power you're consuming is based on each customer. So you could be someone who consumes power that's very expensive per unit, and I could be someone that doesn't consume power that's very expensive. It's very low cost to produce. We pay the same rate, but it's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then add in like, oh, but maybe someone also consumes power that's dirtier because they rely more on gas plants or peaker plants that pollute more per unit of power than someone who consumes more like during the daytime when solar is running. That shouldn't be the same rate of cost of power. Like those two different neighbors, for example, should be paying different amounts per unit of power they they consume, I mean. So we're trying to transform that and build a different kind of marketplace in our microgrids.
So that's actually what I kind of wanted to jump into next. Why are microgrids important? And yeah, let's leave it at that for now. Why are microgrids important considering today's outlook, or I can't even find the correct word, but situation, yes, like for like with Prepa, like why is a microgrid important?
So for your audience, if you want to make like if you want to have a picture, a metaphor where you can actually make the comparison and understand better as a visual, you look at the internet, Web 2, you look at Web 3, people in the know, so far, people that have been able to deal with what the blockchain offers, not just price goes up and I'm happy, but actually what you can do with the technology. And how you go from Web 2 to Web 3 and what it allows you. And then you make the reference with that kind of context, and then you understand that there are so many alternatives that are proposed and now accessible to the user, to the communities, that you can look as the microgrid to be that Web3 component where you have everyone engaged into that community that can fully appreciate the value of their actions, the value of the opportunities, whether they're social, whether they're economic. Because all the barriers that used to exist now do not anymore in a frictionless world where all those opportunities are now accessible through that technology. So a microgrid is in essence, kind of the island that will always have electricity reliable, that will always have a more flexible structure than a utility to be able to adapt to a situation and to be able to try new things as well that matter, because technology grows, it develops, it gets cheaper, and then you should be able to benefit anyone within that microgrid to benefit from it.
Also, just large grids are fragile. We're learning that like every year more and more. I don't think people would have expected that like the Texas grid would go out like that, or that the San Francisco Bay Area would go out. And the reason is essentially every single centimeter of a transmission line. Puerto Ricans know what a transmission line is. Unfortunately, because of the experiences that we go through here, well, this is distribution here locally, but it's essentially the same concept as what we have. I don't know if it's here in the background.
I'm very uneducated.
So you have like poles sticking up, right? These are distribution, but like transmission is what goes over the mountains.
Okay.
So when you go up in the mountains, you go like near Tualo or your Caguas. Every single centimeter of that whole system is a point of weakness. Any single one that breaks, right, on the way between Costa Sur all the way to here to San Juan, anything that breaks along that way, you don't get power anymore, right? And we have these hurricanes that pass through here. This is like really obvious, and they go through like Maria and slice right through the middle of the island, and you have a bunch of really tall towers with every single one, like one of those towers having to work for the island to stay on, and only one of those towers is to come down in a hurricane for the grid to go down.
Generation in the south.
And I haven't even mentioned the generation yet, or the substations, but
please do. Actually, we were talking about substations earlier, and I think
So the generation is located in the south, and there is a reason for that, because it's easier to bring the fuel down to the south because you have a port to basically unload it and put it there. So this is like all the constraints that Prepa had to face at the time had the result of having everything centralized there. So if you live in the north, if you live in the mountain, Dorado on the other side, Rincon, then your energy comes from the south, and then it redistributed through transmission and then local distribution. One point of failure within all that line, and everything is down. So now you have substation that can, also be kind of point of liaison between the different regions, but the generation is still in the south. And so the microgrid is a decentralized, localized structure that does not require having a centralization of generation somewhere. And because it uses renewable and can also use backup generation through propane or fuel, whatever it is dispatchable, because you need to guarantee reliability of the operations, you can have it locally. So just like so.
yeah, and Puerto Rico is not like the only example by any means. Like the San Francisco Bay Area going out a couple years ago, one of the largest centers of economic activity on the whole planet, went out because PG&E just wouldn't put the money in to like fix their transmission. And I think I was explaining this to you all earlier. There was like a hook on a transmission tower in the forest, and
Hook crisis.
it rusted out and cracked, and then the wire fell on the other wires, and then it started sparks and lit the whole forest on fires. The campfire fire, and it was one of the largest fires, maybe the largest one recorded in California.
Wow.
And SF went out because of a hook in one tower, when any one of those hooks could have gone out all the way running from Nevada all the way there. So
Cross state.
yeah.
And sometimes you could have a hook in a microgrid that fails. It could be the same thing, except that microgrid is local, so someone can just go with a truck, fix it in a matter of a few hours, and
There's also like 17 other answers to why, but I'm not going to do that to you. But essentially, what we're trying to basically just do is build anti-fragility in grids. I can list off like 3 other without explaining it, just going into the detail. But Texas had the issue around, they were relying on gas, and the gas froze up as the main part of it. Gas or long lines as well.
Natural gas?
Natural gas pipelines, yeah, that was the main failure. Some wind failed as well, and other resources. But anyway, I'm trying not to draw it on. And then the other issue is you have acts of terrorism, national attacks, and other ones. If a country were to attack another country and they really want to do damage, that's what you're obviously going to do. And you don't have to do it with like kinetic force. You don't have to actually, fire an artillery barrage and take out someone's transmission towers. Exactly. You get on a laptop and you basically do that kind of thing, or you draw really large, heavy loads in strategic locations around a grid, and you could take out the eastern seaboard of the United States, and it wouldn't be that expensive, especially for a state actor, and you could cause what would be equivalent to billions to tens of billions of dollars of economic damage to an economy over a year, equivalent from investing tens of millions of dollars in your attack. And in a national kind of conflict strategy, that's always going to be the one you do. Like, you do something that costs $50 million to do, and you damage your opponent with tens of billions of dollars. We're not facing that, fortunately, right now, but people are constantly, sort of like how they were talking about years ago about there's a virus that'll come out and it will cause these issues, and we'll be wearing masks and we'll have to do all these things. They've been warning about that for the last 10, 15 years, going like, this is coming, and you haven't seen anything remotely bad compared to when countries and terrorist cells begin to attack major economies and taking the grids out.
I think you've read up on this. Back in 2018, when in my short time in Congress as an intern, I had the opportunity to go into this briefing room about cyber warfare, and they were discussing just this. Something happened in New York, actually, where they had taken down, I'm not familiar if it was a substation, with the terminology, but something got hacked and people didn't have energy. Okay? So that's, wow. Do you want to even
15 other reasons.
yeah, exactly. Do you even want to touch a bit on
talk about other stuff too.
on the substation, your vision of all right, let me rephrase what I'm asking you. Okay. So on your website, I read about prosumers, right? And that's basically a local producer of energy, so to speak. Can you guys talk about how consumer and producer? Okay, interesting. Can you talk about what is your vision regarding prosumers and their interactions with the microgrid substation and DexGrid?
So, to I think be the bridge between the previous the previous topic and this topic, people who are who've been researching the technology of DLT, distributed ledger technology. I think today used to be speculation. Today, I think we're heading toward more fundamentals, and I think the world is now realizing that there might be 1 or 2 networks that have enough decentralization so that it assures mutual credibility of interactions between everyone in that network, so that you don't have to trust someone that things will happen. And I'm thinking of Bitcoin and Ethereum, those 2 networks, to be those. And those networks are winning. And they're winning for a reason. It's because decentralization wins at the end of the day. So what's interesting is that, and I think that's the joke, is nation states do not want the decentralization to win, because otherwise they're going to lose control over the persons, the individuals within that nation state. But at the same time, that would kind of solve pretty much every potential attacks that we mentioned earlier, because it means that instead of having one honeypot, you're going to have to go after like many of them independently with different layers of security, so that's going to be very difficult and very expensive. Microgrids follows the exact same model, same thing. Decentralization, flexible marketplace. Then when you go a little bit more micro inside the component of the microgrid, then you have a generation. You could have decentralized generation, meaning that you have 150 houses and you put solar on 150 houses. That's going to be hard because there's going to be capital required for that, and for someone or a group of someone to put capital, invest into 150 different counterparties, that's going to be hard. And 150 different houses, negotiating with each other and agreeing with each other, that's going to be impossible. On-chain governance, for instance, to do the comparison with the blockchain, is very, very hard and has not even touched maybe the beginning of the feasibility. So basically what we're doing is, through the years of energy research that we've done, and mostly in Puerto Rico, the years of blockchain research that we've done, and that we've stick to the principle of decentralization, true decentralization. I am not an Ethereum maximalist, I'm a decentralization maximalist, because I know for sure this is what's going to win. So combining those two, what we're deploying, what we're designing, is following that principle. At some point, we might actually have DexGrid as a DAO as well, and our users become the stakeholders of their own microgrid. Because why not? Because now it's possible to get that. So, as prosumers, we are in the middle. We are the software. We enable the transaction and the operations between the generation, which is going to be an anchor. So that anchor, like a Costco, a Walmart, a Pfizer, a large guy with a balance sheet, with capacity to face an investor and raise millions of dollars to deploy a larger amount of solar panels and batteries, for instance. They're going to lead the way towards reliability, accessibility in Puerto Rico, so that they can sell the electricity to the neighbors. But that's not their job to do that. So we make it happen. We model through our application from scratch to being able to launch. And in the middle, what we do is we onboard the neighbors, and those neighbors can be two categories. They can be consumers and they can be prosumers. And so as they do that, they start interacting with the experience that we offer them through our application. Prosumers at the granular level, consumers, producers, when you look at the marketplace, you can really truly evaluate how decentralized the marketplace is to the lowest level of entry of that marketplace. If you have a small participant can plug itself to that marketplace and benefit from the exact same fairness than anybody else, whatever the size is, you have a true, transparent, accessible, and flexible marketplace for anyone to participate. That's why we absolutely want prosumers to be able to plug themselves into it, sell the little amount of energy that they have when they go on vacation, weekend, whatever, and not get credit. We're not giving them credit. We're giving them real dollars. They get dollars in their account, in their wallet. They can do whatever they want with the dollars. There's no expiration on it.
Yeah, and prosumers, that kind of category is just general of a philosophy of just trying to aggressively remove gatekeeping. So that's not just gatekeeping in energy at all. It's gatekeeping, we're in the NFT space. Hopefully it's removing gatekeeping of central power sitting there dictating who is qualified or in enough to be able to participate in things that are, sort of dictating where things go. But prosumers for us is just anyone should be allowed to plug in and provide power and get paid for it. It's also generally part of our philosophy in our company, sort of fleshing out what I was talking about with our rates being set to, follow more of the trend of low power and clean energy. It's not just that you can also feed in power, but also that we compensate people Yeah, heavily. Like we're really focused on doing this compensation model where if you consume in that way where you can draw down your power at times where if you draw down the power you add reliability to the grid. We immediately build an experience around that we let you know about how you're going to not just save but actually you'll get paid out in credits that, as Nico said, is real dollars. You're not like sitting getting DexGrid bucks that will allow you to spend how we say you can spend it. So you know, you draw down your power like that. It's like, thank you very much. Like, this is really valuable. And now we need less resources installed in the first place. But also, ideally, we shift over to natural resources that are not fossil fuels extracted and refined and burned, but rather when the sun's out, when the wind blows, when the earth is warm in that spot, those kinds of resources are used more often, even though they're not dispatchable. You can't control when you can acquire that power and then provide electricity. We rely on and lean on the consumers to actually add flexibility and then critically pay them for it. So they have the consumer side of fairness, but also that side.
So you're trying to find a way to help people generate passive income from the energy, the extra energy they produce. And in addition, you're trying to make it a more transparent energy marketplace where we're gonna know if our energy comes from incinerator. I'm not sure if that's a term, a trash incinerator. I'm wrong. Whether it comes from burning fossil fuels or it comes from
Burning bunker fuel here in Puerto Rico.
exactly
Oil.
bunker fuel.
Yeah, this is the largest segment of generation. I think it still is the largest segment of generation in the island of Puerto Rico is fuel oil. Number 8 and number 6. It's basically just it's not asphalt. It's just it's the liquid level on top of it. If you kind of have a tower of petroleum product, it's like the bottom here. It's a heavy, really thick stuff. That's what we're burning since the 60s here, Puerto Rico has been burning since the 60s here. Is this like horrible stuff that it's extracted in Brazil, brought here. Every segment, again, I don't know if this gets me in trouble, but every segment is basically in some reports, like, you know, or almost every segment has that corruption at some point. They're fixing it, they're working on it. Good people here are really like focused on you know, addressing it. But these kinds of central systems inherently tend to lead to these things where, you know, they even found in a report that, you know, the testing site in Puerto Rico, when the product arrives to test it, make sure that Puerto Rico, when it pays for its fuel, receives what it paid for, you know, even that had aspects of corruption, ripping off itself almost the island. And these systems, you know, you're burning that. Hopefully we shift it over to something. Even gas is better, obviously, than burning bunker fuel. But the idea is with the central system, you're inherently kind of leading to this kind of stuff. Whereas if you let people sort of navigate on their own and have their communities here, you can do distributed systems and you can allow people to opt in and out of systems much easier.
Yeah, on that note, I recall from that time I was helping this person out, that there is a senator here who is a very big advocate of microgrids. His name is Eduardo Batia, exactly, or Batia. And he is very vocal, you know, I respect him. So, with that being said, guys, I know the prosumers aspect of DexGrid isn't necessarily available yet, pero, or maybe you can shed light on that. Pero what type of services do you offer now that people can access, and how can people contact you in case they're interested?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we are right now looking at February 2022, when everyone has come back from Christmas vacation. Sunset happened, January, people get drunk and gradually go back to work. So, you know, we don't want to push too close to that deadline. So we're looking at February, where people, you know, are really back to reality. So First Touch campaign, we are looking to have 30 projects in Puerto Rico, different regions within Puerto Rico, where anchors, so associations, businesses, municipalities, any entities that wants to participate and see how they can model their microgrid to sell the electricity to their neighbors, they can sign for free to our application that's called the Grid Launcher. And they can model in 5 easy steps, from having no understanding of how a microgrid functions, to being able to have professionals actually do the work on their behalf with all the information, all the data available through the application. They will also be able to raise capital through that grid launcher. And they'll be able to also have every other experts on the regulation, on the grid distribution, on everything that is related to the microgrid, to have all the information necessary for them to be able to move forward. At the same time, what we're going to do is we're going to knock at the door of the neighbors of these anchors, and a minimum of 10 of them. And then we are going to onboard them to that virtual microgrid as it's being developed. And we're going to pay them $50 to onboard, because that's something that we ask of them, so we like to contribute. And we are also going to pay them additional money when they put the feedback. But the biggest part of it is the We Align game. So We Align game is, as Vicenz was mentioning before, we call that the demand response. So when a consumer consumes electricity, they have a need to consume that electricity. But the microgrid, because of the fact that this is renewable, the sun might not follow the same need at the same time, because the sun might be behind clouds, it might be raining. So when that happens, we will be sending a signal to the users and say, hey, can you slow down a little bit? If you do that, you can earn additional energy credits by doing that. And those who will do the best work at it will get paid $300 at the end of a 2-month period to be able to on that game. The second best, $150. So we are looking at about 300 people in Puerto Rico to participate. Right now we're looking at sponsors to be able to help us with paying those neighbors to contribute to the game. One thing that I think, and we were debating with Vicenz about it, one thing that is really going to amaze people in their experience is that, so water and electricity are the two fundamental needs for people, and they should have a very high trust into the provider of water and the provider of electricity. And in that case, that would fall on us. And we want to reward them for the trust that they're going to allow us to share with them. And the way we do that is that when they leave their funds on their wallet in DexGrid, they will have energy credit. And the more they leave those energy credits in their wallet, the more they earn additional energy credit by doing nothing else than just holding the funds into that wallet. We take care of the rest. We get them to earn additional energy credits. And that's the new user experience that I think is going to be so amazing for people, because instead of having to go to Luma and spend 6 hours to open an account or close an account, they'll be running like this. Just leaving your money there, you get additional money. The bank pays you 0.10% on your money. That's going to be much higher here, and you'll be able to earn additional credit. When they participate and help the microgrid to be reliable, they earn additional energy credits. So that's the engagement I was mentioning at the beginning, which is whatever you're doing in a frictionless world, the more you do to help, the more you do to contribute, the more you should get paid to do that.
My Twitter handle is VINCENZ5. You could DM me.
Cool.
He knows the answers.
Yeah. Nico, that's a really interesting idea you brought up. I think it's going to help incentivize people staying invested with you guys. And, people get excited when they see things grow. So I'm sure that model could help you very well. And even if you don't implement it, I'm certain that, putting some money in people's pockets in the form of a non-expiring credit, is going to motivate at least a handful of people. Thank you for, I take it I think this is like a pilot. Can I call this like a pilot?
Yeah.
So you're looking at impacting 300 lives positively in this experiment. So, a round of applause for Nico and Vicenz, guys. It was a pleasure having them over. And if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask. If not, that would be everything, guys. All right, would you guys like to say some final words?
Yeah. So this is a complicated topics, and with Vicenz we spent a lot of time saying, all right, how do we make it very easy to comprehend? I think we succeeded in the grid launcher to get those simple steps going, and then the marketplace. We're working with the regulator on everything that we're doing because the marketplace has to be regulated as well. Yeah. So my question to you would be, do you think people are going to be more excited to have reliable and accessible electricity, or do you think they're going to be more exciting of having additional energy credits? Those energy credits being real dollars, by the way. They can send that money back to their bank account anytime they want.
Credits.
It's the energy credits because they prepay. And so when they consume, it's being used to pay for that. Prepayment, there is a reason for the prepayment. The credit profile of individuals in Puerto Rico is not the best in the world. And so again, we want to remove frictions. So for them to be able to onboard without any risk on that, then just prepay and then they use the money to the electricity.
With the trends we're seeing, things are going digital fast. They've already gone digital, right? And every day we depend more on smart applications we have in our home that run on electricity. And one of the major hurdles a lot of Puerto Ricans face, and people that live here, frankly, is the constant power outages. I don't know what is it that happens that some appliances get damaged from this happening, right? From outages. So I think people are going to be both excited for different reasons. They're going to be excited for reliable energy because everything's more internet focused. If you're selling your internet services, whether your personal services or adapt, your business depends on being able to be on the internet. So people are going to be excited for that and regarding that reason, and then they're going to be excited regarding the economic reason. Here is a major hurdle. I don't want to get in trouble saying anything, so I just won't. I had an opinion.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's a hassle. It's a hassle. I kind of lost my train of thought, but people are going to be. I picked it back up. People are going to be excited to get more money in their pocket, right? And to be able to have reliable energy, something that you think we'd have.
Yes.
All right.
Do it in a sustainable way.
Yes.
So do it in a sustainable way. Ooh, that one's good too. I'm not a big fan of burning that gunk either because we live in this planet and we're already, I don't know if you guys agree, but I think we're seeing some effects of global warming. Not a myth. So Vicenz, you want to say something?
Yeah, just part of picking the whole idea up of decentralized grids and decentralizing, allowing communities to build their own stuff is I just don't, as someone who's been passionate about climate change and reducing the effects we're going to have, so I was 13 years old and read the science on it that was coming out at that time, I just don't, and having tried to go to conferences and trying to be involved in the process as a regular person who's concerned and trying to build my knowledge up and being rejected from being even allowed to go in because I'm not part of a government as an employee, I'm not part of the right organization, and then I watch these absolute, honestly, clowns go up there and talk about nice things and thank each other and have these conferences, and listening to people in those conferences say this is all garbage. Inside of the conferences when I sneak my way in somehow, and they're saying no, this is garbage, nothing's going to happen here, we just do this thing every year on something so critical. If we don't solve climate change, it's over. It's all over. None of this really mattered very much. And then this is the path we're taking where we're not solving it. We have to decentralize this. We're not going to solve it this path. So.
No, we have to change the way we live, to be frank. Perhaps not so much at the individual level, yes, obviously at the individual level, but also in the societal level. If you look on Google Maps, and this doesn't have to do with energy, but if you look on Google Maps, anywhere where human settlements are in Puerto Rico looks like bone. This place is a tropical island, and normally you'd think it'd be covered in green, but wherever there's people, it just looks gray and dead. And we gotta work on that.
And what's interesting, So what's interesting is that obviously, you know, if we try to change the status quo, then we're gonna hit people's like large, wealthy institutions' wallet, and they're gonna go after us. When you look at the blockchain world, crypto, it's a $3 trillion industry now. Banks, they call all the names about it, scams, hacks. I think one scenario called the developers, super shady developers or whatever, scammers. Everybody made fun of it on crypto Twitter. But the point is, even though China tried to ban, US tried to stop, infrastructure bill coming out, trying to tell everyone, anyone, whether you are 10-year-old having a validator on your laptop, that you're gonna have to report to the IRS when it's actually impossible because you don't know who is on the other side. That's funny because there's nothing they can do about it. The way we approach it with the microgrid, decentralized that it is going to be the same way. Now, 1, 2, 3 pilots proves the case, gives us a seat at the table, and then we start the conversation of things should be changed. You can participate, you can collaborate with us, and we can move forward, or we just move on and we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. The exact same way that blockchain industry has done with the banks. There's nothing different. Energy, then water, then all the other industries are going to do the same thing.
Yeah. We need that. We need that. All right, on that note, if there aren't any questions, this is the final call, all right? So that's it. Thank you all for coming, and a quick round of applause for Nico and Vicenz, the team behind DexGrid.